59 here. I got 6 o'clock. It's a max, so it's accurate. I got 6 o'clock. Okay, what am I doing? What is executive? I don't know. Rise, please join me in the pledge as I call the North Syracuse Education Board of Education meeting to order, something like that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is when he was out of town, I'm thinking now. Thank you. I'm going to begin with a moment of silence for the following. Donald Adams, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Rose Mary Tuttle, a retiree of the North Syracuse Central School District. James Jimmy Barrett, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Richard Grosso, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. And Eric Olson, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Thank you. Okay, we're going to begin with a proclamation for School Library Media Specialist Day, which will be April 5th, 2022. Throughout our school buildings, school library media specialists have an impact on the district's students. They have accepted this exceptional responsibility with commitment, dedication, and love. The school library media specialists of the North Syracuse Central School District are professionals of the highest caliber. They've dedicated themselves to the ideals of their profession. Students, parents, administrators, and community members recognize, applaud, and appreciate their efforts to ensure students receive quality educational services. To honor the school library media specialists of the North Syracuse Central School District and their accomplishments, I, Paul Farfalia, President of the Board of Education of the North Syracuse Central School District, on behalf of the board, express our deepest gratitude and hereby declare April 5th, 2022 as School Library Media Specialist Appreciation Day to be celebrated with appropriate educational activities. And I'll move that and ask for a second from Mr. Crabtree. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. We have some here. Great. There's a handheld one up there.
At this time, we want to take the opportunity to recognize our school library media specialist. We have John Krilla here to help us with this recognition.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for the recognition. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves and where they work and how many years they've been here.
Kelly Forsyth at North Syracuse Junior High, and this is my 3rd year in the district.
I'm Morgan Gallrap from Gillette Middle School, and this is my 6th year in the district.
Jim DeSantis, Sister Elementary, and I've been here for 5 years now.
Okay, we now have the Carl W. Siley Bear Road Elementary School BPT presentation. I listen. I do listen. It's all yours when you're ready. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce our BPT presenters. We have Jen Pacelli, our counselor, Peg Parker, AIS and Reading, and co-chair Jessica Bala. If you take a look at our first slide, you will see that we have about 274 students. There are 6 sections in kindergarten, 5 in first, and 4 sections in second grade. I believe that you're familiar with the elementary vision for KWS Bear Road, as well as the team commitment. We have an emphasis on making sure that all people feel included and valued, both for the community, our students, our teachers, all of our constituents. For the building attendance goal, while we do follow the district's guidelines, we've decided to personalize one aspect of it, which would be to let our chronically absent students know that we care about them. And we have decided that the teacher will call the parent, followed by the counselor or nurse. And then I would call if we are not successful in improving the student's attendance. But in addition to calling them on the lack of attendance, we're trying to encourage with some incentives for students to come to school every day. And we're asking the teachers to make positive comments to our students about their attendance. We are trying to consider doing some special recognition during the morning announcements. And for next year, we hope to attain a book machine, which would allow us to give students tokens so that we can encourage not only reading, but good attendance. Jen?
So we have looked at an SEL goal for our building. We gave the BIMAS survey for all of the students in our building. And we took a look at that data to come up with a goal to work on that social emotional development for our kiddos. So we took a look at so the scale's got 5 areas. There's conduct, which is kind of, disciplinary aggression type stuff, negative affect, so sad, withdrawn type kids, cognitive and attention, and then social functioning and academic functioning. So of course we want to look at any kids in any of the red areas on any of those, but our largest area of red is the social functioning, which we had 30% of our kids in the red, which is the risk or the concern level, which kind of makes sense. We only have our K-2s right now, so they're younger, they have fewer years of that time to develop those social skills. So not super surprising, but of course that's what we want to work on. So we set a goal for ourselves to take that from only 70% of our kids in the green, the typical or strength areas, and bump that up to 80% of our students in the green. So we've taken a look at all of our kids who fell into that concern category in the social functioning to make sure, to take a look at them and see whether there's more that needs to be put into place for any individual students. And then throughout the school, some of our SEL strategies that we've been doing that have been really great and successful in our building. We have the Positivity Project, which we've been doing for several years now to work on those positive mindsets and character strengths for our kiddos. We've added a mindful minute to our morning announcement. So each and every morning, the kids have some kind of mindfulness activity, a movement, a yoga, a meditation type activity, all, student oriented to work on that. We've got our second step and our ADAPEP lessons in every classroom in the school receive some sort of SEL lessons from me or from our ADAPEP counselor. Many of our classrooms run classroom meetings. They have all the sorts of relationship building going on within the classrooms. We've got group and individual school counseling for kids who have, need more of a targeted approach for that development. And then our Promise Zone specialist is doing some social skills lunches, attempting to get to as many kids in our school as possible, so every kid can have an opportunity for a small group to work on some of those social skills.
So it looks like I'm up next, and I wanted to describe what the next 6 slides are going to show you. We had the opportunity, because we're presenting late to you, to benchmark our students in the fall and in the winter, both in reading and in math. So the slides follow a pattern. This one is kindergarten, And it's showing us the growth from fall to winter. And I wanted to point out to you, I'm going to slide this a little bit, this transition chart down here. This red and the number 69 shows us that in the fall, we had 69 students in that red concerning area. Those are our students that we consider tier 3. They need some immediate and intensive intervention. And it's 68% of the kindergarten class. But this second part of this shows us that of those 69 students, 55 have remained in the red in January, 7 have moved to the yellow, and 3 have moved to green. So the yellow area is approximately at the 11th through 24th, I think it is, percentile. And then the green is more average in the bell curve, which is not to say they don't need instruction, because clearly they're little guys and they do. And then the yellow part describes the same thing. We had 22 students in the yellow. We now have 8 in the red. So 8 of our yellow students have slipped to red, 8 remained in yellow, and 6 are in the green. And again, that's same with our green. We had none of them slip to red, which is good. We had 4 slip to the yellow area and 7 remained. And you'll notice sometimes the numbers don't match up, but it's because we've had kids, move in or move out of the school. So you can see it's a little tougher to see the change, but you can see this yellow area is bigger and the green area is a little bit bigger too. And that's what we look for. So this slide is the math part. They call it early numeracy in Ames Web. And I'm not going to go through all the numbers because you can see them on yourself, but math, we had a pretty good change, a pretty good rate of growth. You can clearly see that the red is much smaller in the winter than it was in the fall, and the green is much, much bigger. So that's kindergarten. This is first grade reading. And again, you can see some growth was made in our green areas. Yellow looks similar, but the red has shrunk. And that's what we look for. So that's first grade reading. This is first grade math. And you can see that we had a really strong growth in math. And I chalk it up to a lot of good teaching in our building. And this is our second grade reading. And whoops, sorry. And again, you can see the same thing. The red has shrunk quite a bit. Our green has grown and our yellow has grown. But again, it's growth, and that's what we want to see. So then our second grade math, again, is a lot of strong growth in there. Again, that's exactly what we want to see. So from there, we move this data, I guess you could say, to our PLCs. We set some goals across the building. Each PLC obviously is going to operate a little bit differently. We have different teachers, different needs, different personalities, all of that. But we based our agenda on these 4 guiding questions. We also try to keep weekly minutes so that other people that are part of that PLC, if they couldn't attend or if they just want to look back at the minutes, they have it. We looked at the strategies to try to really pinpoint what do we do, what do we look at when we're in the PLCs. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, but we definitely are data focused. We look at the building, we look at the grade level, and then we look at the classroom. And one of the most helpful parts of that this year is we have set aside 3 times a year that after we have administered Ames Web, we get to meet as a big PLC with all the players coming, our ITAs, our reading department, everyone there, all of our classroom teachers. And that's exactly what we did. We looked at the growth. Ames Web is pretty powerful in that we can really narrow it down to individual kids and individual strengths and weaknesses. So we did that during the Ames Web meeting. And the last part of that is the collaboration part. it's a school effort. It's not just the classroom teacher needing to be on their own. We meet with all let's say first grade teachers, and then the reading team is also involved, and the ITAs can come, and our reading coaches are involved in what we do in the building and how we support our kids. And again, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can see what we do.
And, and then that brings us to the last slide, which is lucky for me, I get to talk about the celebrations that, that Bear Road has. And we just highlighted some of our most important ones. And I'd like to point out our Bear Road PTO. It has always been a strong and very caring PTO, and they remain strong and caring of our whole entire Bear Road community. They've really kind of wrapped their arms around us this year and have been very kind, as they always have. And they we listed a few of the events and things that they've done for us as a staff and as a Bear Road community, and we're very grateful for our PTO. The next thing I'd like to point out is technology. Wow, they have been outstanding support. Their knowledge is incredible, and they are always there to support, whether it's coming into the classroom and doing lessons or helping us out as teachers last minute. I'm usually the one that has just something simple unplugged. But Chris Mank is the one that works with us at our school, and he is just, I cannot say enough of good things about him. As a district, as a North Syracuse district, super lucky to have the technology support that we have. And then going into the instructional supports, I love the addition of the instructional team that we have, the TAs and the coaches. They've made a huge difference with trying to fill in those academic gaps from COVID. They've been phenomenal. Our two assistants are always there, willing to lend a hand whenever they can. Nicole has been filling in as the coach, has done an excellent job. Whenever we need something, they're right there. So we're really grateful in this time of need for the extra support. I would like to acknowledge this lady sitting behind me that doesn't probably want the acknowledgement in this next one. But, especially the last couple of years, this past year has been challenging, to say the least, for Bear Road. And we're very lucky that we've had a leader in our school that has helped us to get through some things and has been instrumental in providing some ways to teach, for mental health for us. And she's been instrumental in bringing yoga sessions in and advocating for us to get, to help us as a community to start healing at Bear Road. I can't give her enough kudos. Thank you, Olivia. We did have her name in there, but she made us take that out there. Building counselors have also been phenomenal with this, especially with the social emotional health and everything with COVID. As Jen had showed you, listed some of the SEL strategies earlier. The kids have really needed that, and we've seen a big difference in them and their support in the classroom. That's been wonderful. And then last but not least, I'd like to talk about the staff resiliency a little bit. Bear Road certainly has had its challenges, and we continue to go through challenges. However, the staff always pulls together there to support each other, to support the learning of our kids, and we don't give up. We don't give up on each other. And I'm proud to say that I am part of this, and I can end it with, for those of us that are lucky enough to have known Carl Siley, he had this saying, and his saying was, "Nobody beats the bear." And boy, does that hold true today. So I would like to end our presentation there. And if anybody has any questions, we are open.
I have some questions. I'm going to start. Usually I go around, but then I forget. One quick question and a couple comments, or maybe one question, a comment, and a question. I'm not sure. We'll see.
That's okay. We'll see how it goes.
The just PLC, you said something that piqued my curiosity. You have I'm assuming grade level PLCs where you're meeting weekly. I see it says weekly minutes
Yes.
here. Then you mentioned this big PLC. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the weekly PLCs are pretty big because the teachers meet and the reading department meets with them. And if our ITAs are the instructional teaching assistants,
Mhm.
they come in when they can because they're very much a part of all of our grade levels, just like the reading department is. And so that's that part that I meant, but also the Ames web meetings, the data meetings that we have 3 times a year. I call that a great big PLC because we actually are able to get substitute teachers into the classrooms. So we have an hour and 45 minutes for every grade level to look at this data from Ames web. I don't know if you remember, quite a few years ago, we used Ames Web
Mhm.
and then we switched to HMH, but now we're back with Ames Web Plus. And for those of us that were used to Ames Web, this Ames Web Plus gives us so much more information. So because it's new, so far it's been 2 times this year that we've had a chance to have this longer meeting about the data. We can really delve into it. Like I said, we look at it as the building data, look at how we've outgrown, look at this grade level. We look at, what worked, what didn't work. We break it right down. We can break it right down, and we did, to individual kids. This kid made phenomenal growth. Why? What did we do as this whole building? And this child didn't make as much growth. Why not? What can we do? How can we support not only the student in his or her learning, but also the classroom teacher? And, they're trying to support everybody. So that's what I meant by that.
Oh, thank you. And I wanted to thank, and all it was kind of done already, I guess, but thank Ms. Cams for, well, the work you've done for our district, but especially what you've done for Bear Road this year. Thank you. And I've been in a lot of school buildings and I missed the last tour of Bear Road, but I went to one earlier in the year and I don't even know how to express, I want to know how it's going. What do you think of the building? Because I was blown away by what it looked like when I saw it in an unfinished state, but pretty close. I mean, we've come a long way. We had a lot of obstacles with this referendum, as you know, the first one was all ready to go and then we had the labor shortage and all, but any comments about that?
I can say that somebody that's been there for a long time, we've waited a long time for
Mhm.
this. And we've been really excited. There's been challenges and continues to be challenges. We do wish that the teacher's voice was listened to a little bit more. And I think some of the issues, maybe could have been solved through that, listening to teachers more. But we're doing the best with what we have there. It's an ongoing process. We can't wait to welcome the 3rd and
Mhm.
4th grade teachers back and the students back. I know there's a lot of parents that are very excited to get in and see the school. So we're looking forward to that. And we just keep kind of trudging along and have that staff resiliency that
Okay,
was
well,
on that last page.
well, thank you. Thank you.
And I would like to tell you a little funny story about, it's been a long
I
time
could use a
coming.
funny story. That'd be good.
When I was hired, I was interviewed in this building with Carl Siley and Diane Feeney.
Mhm.
And I was quite intimidated by the 2 of them. At one of the last questions Mr. Siley asked me was, we're up for renovation. Talk to us about your ideal school. Okay, I've been contemplating retirement with a broken heart. I love what I do. I love my job. I love Bear Road. I love the staff. So it's time for me to let some other people, do what they do. But I wanted to work in the finished building for 1 year. So I did get to work in a new classroom for this past year. It is a classroom. It's not a reading room, but I did get to do that. So we made it. I made it.
And we will miss her.
I will
Thank
miss
you.
this.
So thank you. Other questions now. I'll stop dominating.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. And I just want to say, I love your energy. I love your attitude. The kids would pick up on it if you weren't resilient and, you had some contention there. So thank you for that. Love that. Also, your enhanced protocol for dealing with the chronic absenteeism. I love that as well. Thank you for doing that. And I just wanted to ask, has there been a positive effect with that, with the teacher calling and nurse and principals?
There has been. I've only had to, when it got to my level, have 3 students. And we think that's a very good thing. But the quarantine situation made it a little dicey, especially
Yeah.
in the first semester. So we were careful not to overdo the attendance for those students who had the quarantine issue. So we gave them a pass.
Thank you for that. Also, the mindful minute, the yoga, the stretching, great life skills to teach. So thank you for that as well. And also your detailed explanation on the student growth when you're going over your charts. So we're seeing some good progress, and that's fantastic. I'm just concerned about the students that slip back. Is that typical or?
Well, without having that in front of me, I can't, tell you specifically who those students were. Some of, well, obviously all of our special ed students are also on there.
Okay.
This time, I know, has been tough for everyone.
Yeah.
So we, in the reading department, when we did the second benchmarking in January, we did look at those students who have slipped back, and we have got them under our wing at this point. Some of them we can tell are making good growth right now, and some, may not be making that growth. And again, we did have some new students come in and some students leave, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but often the students who are mobile are the ones that struggle. So when we did the benchmarking in January, they may have just gotten there to the building, and so their scores are kind of intermixed. So without a total analyzing of who slipped back, I think that would be probably my closest guess as to why that looks like that.
And you've been doing this a very long time. So, I mean, what is your general feeling? We're almost at the end of March now. I mean, I know there's a lot more work to do.
There is a lot more work to do. However, this is very typical this time of year, March to April, especially our second graders, but it trickles down the first. And I will be honest with you, this is our first year to really focus on kindergarten, and we've been able to do that again because the third and fourth aren't there. But for first grade and second grade, this is the time of year that they explode in their learning. The second graders, all of a sudden, I swear that they look at you and went, "Oh, that's what you've been saying all year long."
The light bulb.
It is. It's very much a light bulb time of year for these kids. So for a lot of them, I'm feeling pretty confident about that. And we'll see in May, how it ends up.
And again, with all the extra supports that we were given, that's a huge
Yeah.
plus for these kids.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I got a question. Go ahead.
No, you're welcome.
As usual, I'm just going to talk about the Positivity Project because I love it. I'm curious, how many years have you been into the Positivity Project?
Maybe third,
That's what I was-
Your third year? Okay. Do you find, with the teachers, do you find that they're embracing it? It's easier as you go along? It's okay.
Yeah. I find that they do like it, and they start to use some of it in their daily interactions with each other. So that's super nice and rewarding for me to see as a teacher, and to know that a program that we brought to school is actually, they're picking up on it and using it.
Nice. I heard something the other day, and I guess it's a saying that's been around for a while, but it talks about the mental health of students. And I feel like getting a t-shirt made of it. It's Maslow before Bloom's. And I think that is just so it says it all right there. And thanks for all you're doing, and thanks for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment, probably echoes what Mary already said, but just looking at these numbers from fall to winter, having kids that have never been in school before, it's reassuring, it's comforting to see that because of the way the staff interacts and what you do for the kids, that it truly is shown by these numbers. So great job.
Thank you.
And we think about our second graders as they had half a year of kindergarten,
Mhm.
of normal, of typical kindergarten. And then it's been a COVID school, you know, the COVID, it hit and it changed everything. So we were still all learning. Last year was definitely a learning experience for me, but we were all still learning. So when they came back for 5 days a week, we still had more to learn. How do we do this? How do we address the SEL? How do we teach them how to read? How do we teach them how to line up in the hall when they've got to be arm's length or more apart from each other? And so it was, for me, watching after all these years, I'm impressed with what our school has been able to do for these kids. I really am.
You should be. It looks, I mean, these numbers are wonderful. And to have kids like, you know, kindergarten students who, or second graders, as you said, that are just learning how to act in a school because they have no idea. And I can imagine at that age how difficult that must have been. So incredible.
Mr. Crabtree?
Yes, of course, I would have some questions. I want you to know that Mr. Stone gave us this acronyms and terminology, so I knew what you were talking about with Haggerty and sound. Thank you, Greg, for that. Question about math. So John, I know, comes around and does help the teachers and so forth. One of the things I know Mr. Bowles has been talking about is remediation now to start. When I was teaching, it didn't start to third grade. Are we working math-wise too with some first, second kindergarten students too?
Yeah, we were able to do that this year. And it was a challenge to get all of our reading kids in and try to set up a schedule that would meet the needs of not only the students, but the teachers, because there's not enough time in a day as there is. And we were asking them, can we have them a little bit more? So Greg was wonderful with allowing us the flexibility to set up a schedule that would work for the building. So we don't see the kids as much as we do for reading, because it's your 3 to
Reading's
5
the
days a
foundation,
week,
yeah.
a half hour. So for our math kids, we only see them a couple times a week, and it's not quite a half hour. But I guess, I'd like to say the math scores, the improvement has to do with our department helping, but I think it's the teachers. I think it's, the support coming from the district level. I also think math is so much more concrete that it's easier for little people to grab a hold of and make sense out of it. So I think all of those different pieces help.
And in addition, again, I'll go back to the instructional TAs. They're able to give and work with some of our math students that need that. So they've been instrumental also in helping, support those kids.
So we do not see kindergarten kids for math. We
okay.
only see them for the, I call it reading, but it's letters and sounds. And that's been wonderful to actually fully be able to embrace having kids, my hands on the kindergarten students, and then first grade and second grade. And next year, it's going to be I'd love to be there when the third and fourth grades come back, mainly for the teachers, but.
I just wanted to say that, when I taught there, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but we have a superintendent and a school board, because I've been on the board before, that is for small class sizes. We're working on the budget for next year. I think you'll be pleased. More AIS teachers in buildings that need them, not like 222. So Dan and Greg look at buildings that really need the reading. So this board is very supportive with the administration.
That we appreciate.
But I want to say my old school. So Livia, again, can't say enough what you have done with that building, as you did with Allen Road. And I know you were other schools. I think you've been almost all of them now, because it's true to my heart. Carl Siley was a mentor for me for 16 years and a friend. And he'd be very pleased what you have done in that building and what's going to happen when we hire a new. But Peg, I just have to, this is very sad for me, but I want to thank you for everything. When I was a teacher there, we started programs, push in. I see you coming in my room and did a poetry unit with my whole class, not just my AS kids. We brought the speech teacher and Colleen. We brought Deb DeSocia, and we had 3 teachers in my room working on all kinds of projects. You made a difference. The one thing about you, it was not just about reading or math. It was about the student. You really, truly cared about the student. And you and I know the student that we have kept in contact for over 20 years. And you made a difference in that girl's life. And I know a former student, her daughter, you know who I'm talking about, did virtual for kindergarten. Mother was there every day doing it. But you did some extra things. She's a bright girl, she's good, but you did some extra projects with her. And when she came to school this year for 1st grade, she just loves Carl W. Siley Elementary School. So thank you, Peg, for everything.
And I have to say, I talked about the interview here where I was scared to death. And then I interviewed at the school, and Mary Craven was there. She was tough and you protected me. And you were probably the first teacher that said, "You want to do what? Sure, come on in and we'll try it." And I will always, always thank you for that.
Peg will be missed.
Any other? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the ELA updates and proposal for us on the reading series, ELA series. Got a tough act to follow there, Mr. Stone.
Oh, I was just about to say I have a really tough act to follow. Thanks, Paul. All right. So good evening, everyone. Just like to take a quick moment to thank the Board of Education Superintendent for allowing me this opportunity to present this evening. Tonight, I'm going to be going over some K-4 ELA updates as well as a recommendation on an adoption. On the screen, you see the Ela Committee Mission. Just take a moment to review that. So as I would like to point out, this comes up every time at the committee also. There's a word in there that kind of stands out for folks, and it's that prepares them for college. And I want to point out the intent behind that with this committee. The conversations we had in the very beginning with this committee when we formed was really talking about what is needed for students to succeed, whether it be college or any other career path. And where we landed with this mission statement was that our mission is to ensure we're preparing students for college level reading and comprehension. When you look at jobs of the future in almost any field, including trades or anything else, almost everything really requires a high level of reading with comprehension. And so that's why that language is in there. It's not to insinuate that all students will be going on to college, but it's for us to ensure that we're preparing them for college or college level reading with comprehension based on the needs of those future jobs. Equally important, or it's even more important, this is our goal for the committee, that every student in every grade is at 100% reading proficiency with nothing less as accepted. And that's our goal. And I point that out to folks all the time. Are we ever going to see 100% reading proficiency? Probably not, because if any school had that, they would make the news and everyone wanted to do exactly what they're doing. But that's our goal, is to continually improve and work toward that, making sure that we're continuously improving and ensuring we're preparing our students for success. So I'm just going to take a very brief moment to take 2.5 years of work and pare it down into about 30 seconds. The ELA committee began meeting in fall of 2019. We spent time in the fall and winter of this first year talking about what our current literacy instruction looked like in the classroom and what materials teachers were using to instruct their students in reading. we spent a great deal of time learning together about the science of reading. Starting our learning by reading The Knowledge Gap by Natalie Wexler, we learned that the importance of building background knowledge in our students in order to level that playing field, especially in a district as diverse as ours. The committee continued to learn by reading a book of our own choosing and then reporting out to the group so we could expand our knowledge together, as well as many articles on the science of reading and balanced literacy. We dove into the theoretical models like the simple view of reading, Scarborough's reading rope, 5 pillars of reading instruction, and the 4-part processor. We knew that we needed to take the time to educate ourselves on how children actually learn to read and the best practices in teaching reading in order to make sound decisions for the district and sound recommendations. So basically, we needed to go slow to go fast, to deepen our own knowledge, to make sure we were making very informed decisions for our students. So fast forward a little bit, when we shut down back in March of 2020, we as a committee never stopped our work. We continued as a committee because we knew how important this was and what was needed to be in the best interest of students. So in the spring of 2020, we partnered with BOCES to perform a needs assessment of our K-4 ELA program and curriculum. This included 75 teachers, as well as special education, ENL, AIS, teaching assistants, administrators, a wide swath of elementary educators were all interviewed, and this was all compiled into a final needs assessment that was presented to the committee. And you can see here, these were the 6 priority areas that really shone through that needs assessment, that we were lacking a guaranteed and viable curriculum, meaning that all students were guaranteed access to the same level of rigor and the same content. Viable meaning that our teachers had the ability and the time to actually be able to teach it. That was severely lacking. We were lacking consistency. Within our district, if a student moved from one school to another, they can encounter a completely different set of expectations, set of curriculum, set of assessments and content, or even within a school, classroom to classroom. This was really identified as a serious concern. Another area that was identified in this is lack of common assessments. It's really hard for teachers to come together in a PLC to sit down and talk about assessment data when you're not comparing apples to apples. And so this was identified as a key priority area. Our teachers also said there was a severe lack of quality materials. A lot of the materials in classrooms had been in place for many years. They were starting to fall apart. And some teachers had access to full sets of authentic literature text and others did not. And so that was starting to fall apart and identified as a serious need. Also, what came loud and clear through this assessment is that our teachers truly were passionate educators who deeply care about their students. In almost every interview that came up, time and again, and I put that on here because that's an important thing for us to recognize. Our teachers are committed to this district and our students. And then finally, it was very clearly indicated that our teachers were recognizing that there was a need for change. So the ELA committee started this process by looking at 15 different potential programs in order to pilot. A great deal of time was spent researching what programs were out there. And also we developed a rubric internally to evaluate these different programs. We were able to take those 15 and very quickly pare them down to 6 that really could meet our needs. From those 6, that's when we dove in deeply. The committee had presentations from all 6 programs where they were able to ask questions and learn more about the program. And they completed an extensive rubric to evaluate each of those 6 programs. Again, it was actually very quickly narrowed down to 3. And then when we dove deeply into those 3, it was identified that Amplify, CKLA, and Wit and Wisdom were by far the 2 strongest programs for us to pilot. It was very clear from that data and those conversations that those 2 were far superior from anything else that was out there. So we began that pilot process last spring by identifying some pilot teachers. And looking at from the whole perspective, what we wanted to do was really make sure we had a really balanced pilot. We wanted to make sure we had equal representation. And ideally, what we were looking for is to have 1 of each in each grade level in each school. It broke down pretty close to that, not perfectly. There was always a lot of last minute shuffling, but we ended up with 23 pilot teachers for each program in the summer and fall. So this past summer and this past fall, that was when we did all the trainings for staff. And then an important note here is that our pilot teachers decided to change the pilot process a little bit. It's in alignment with the board policy, but they're piloting one program for the entire school year. And the rationale for that was that oftentimes a teacher pilots for 6, 8, or 10 weeks and then switches to another program. Based on the learning loss and COVID and everything else, it was a unanimous decision that our students would not benefit from starting a year in one program for 2 months and then drastically switching to another program that could actually be detrimental to their learning. So for that reason, as well as our teachers said, it's really hard to just get a pilot underway and then have it ripped out from under you and do something completely different. And so each group chose to pilot for the entire duration with one of the two. So most important throughout this was the teacher feedback throughout the entire process. So now we're in this school year. Looking at September through June, really the priority there was getting implementation and support. That was a lot of work for teachers to take on a completely new program, to go through all the training, implement, and then really have fidelity to the program as it was designed. So there was a lot of ongoing support, and that looked like weekly or regular PLC meetings where each grade level of piloters came together with the coaches to hear of concerns, what was working, what was not. We learned very quickly we needed to do some additional training in some areas. And really there was a lot of troubleshooting throughout that process. Toward the end of January, all pilot teachers completed an extensive rubric. And when I say extensive, this right here is the packet. There's 20 pages here of rubric that the teachers completed, really detailing each element of the program that they piloted. We took all of that data from that rubric and put it all together for 2 presentations this past couple of weeks, March 3rd and March 8th. So we brought our committee together as well as all pilot teachers to go through this presentation and discuss all of the January data. What was powerful with this was not only the data piece of it, but that we went through and highlighted all of the pros and cons of each program. This was created by the teachers, and I have to give a shout out to our coaches as well, who helped really lead the charge there and organizing all this and working with the teachers to get their comments represented. And many of our pilot teachers also presented to the committee, and ultimately they were able to have a lot of dialogue back and forth around each program. From there, the folks who were in the room for each of those presentations completed an 11 indicator rubric, which I'm going to go over tonight, which kind of gives you a quick summary. And I'm not going to spend much time. I'm going to give a very quick overview because I think you're going to see some interesting things with the data. So like I said, I'm going to walk you through the 11 indicators. I'd like to note something really important here is that the data is only one part of this puzzle. A big part of this really comes down to the dialogue the teachers had, the comments, the feedback, the Q&A that went back and forth. That's really important in addition to the data that's on this rubric. The data you're going to be looking at, here's how to interpret this. So obviously the blue here is favorable. We only gave 2 options for each indicator to keep it clean, either a favorable opinion of it or an unfavorable. And there were a few responses where teachers did not select either or. So those are indicated in the yellow. I am not going to spend time diving deep into these. That was what the committee did. We spent 90 minutes going through every detail of the rubric data and having conversations. But what I'm sharing with the board and community is giving you a very quick overview. And I think you're going to see some trends within this. So when you're looking at this, I'm going to go rather quickly through each slide and really just look at that blue and the red, favorable, blue, unfavorable, red. When we get into this, you're also going to see 5 priority areas. These were identified by the committee as being more heavily weighted than some of the others. These are the priority areas. So the first one is phonics. This is identified as a priority area. You can see here that the Amplify CKLA scored out a little higher than Wit and Wisdom. The next one is spelling, the ability to hear sounds, match them to the letter, and arrange them in the correct order to make words. So again, here you're seeing that Amplify CKLA scored out a little higher than Wit and Wisdom. Vocabulary, so the words that students understand and use, this is a priority area. And you can see on this one that Wit and Wisdom scored out a little higher than the Amplify. So knowledge of language structure, this is those conventions of print, grammar, and syntax, the sentence structure. And as you can see here, it's pretty much neck and neck, almost identical. Verbal reasoning, we defined as the ability to understand and reason using words. And again, here the data is almost identical. Literacy knowledge, this is the skills that provide the basis for children's ability to read and write. And on this one, you can see that Wit and Wisdom scores out a little higher than the Amplify CKLA does. Background knowledge, again, a significant priority area. And this is that amount of information or knowledge that someone has on a particular topic. And you can see here almost identical data. Writing, same thing here, literally within 1.7% of each other, almost identical. Comprehension, another priority area, and this is that making meaning from written text and auditory information. Again, pretty much identical. Assessment. This one here, you can see that Amplify was scored higher than Wit and Wisdom did on the assessment piece, another priority area when we talked about those common assessments and PLCs. Supporting diverse learners. So this is really around how do we support at the tier 1 level our students, the scaffolding. And you can see this one here, again, CKLA falls a little bit more favorable. So we, like I said, spent 90 minutes diving into that. And I don't know if you saw the same themes I did, but it comes out pretty equal on many footings. So following those presentations with the committee on March 10th, we reconvened everyone for a final review of the data, a deep discussion, and then to provide a final recommendation. And so you can see here, similar to the data sets, we had 28 that recommended CKLA and 28 that recommended Wit and Wisdom. Yeah, everyone's laughing a little bit because as I said to the committee, I was really hopeful going in there that we'd see a very strong response and we'd know which one came out on top, but that's not the case. Both of these programs are excellent. And what I take away from this is that either way, these programs will truly meet the needs of our students. And if you're wondering about the number difference there, so we had 23 teachers pilot the program and we have 28 vote. That's because the CTD co-taught classrooms would get 2 votes in that regards. So in a classroom where there's 2 teachers, that's going to bump that up to that 28. So that's where the 28 comes from. So we dove a little bit deeper in the data and we said, okay, so for the CKLA pilot teachers, 6 of them actually voted for Wit and Wisdom. For Wit and Wisdom, 7 of those voted for CKLA. So again, not a clear indicator. So it kind of led to how I was feeling after that. So here, this is a picture of my actual office. If you go down the hall, you'd see this. And this actually, there's more than that's up there. So following that presentation, I spent 10 days having conversations with teachers and pilot teachers, trying to put together the pros and cons of each, looking at all of the aspects, working with the sales reps to look into what the professional development would look like, looking into every single piece of data that I could pull together in order to make a recommendation. And what it came down to, and you can't see this well in this photo, but in the center there of that Wit and Wisdom and CKLA pro-con chart, it says in green, what is best for students, which is the core value I take back to everything that I do when making any decision. And I will tell you, this kept me up at night many, many nights. And I kept adding to the pro-con. Ultimately, I will be making that recommendation that we move forward with CKLA Core Knowledge Language Arts. This program, I certainly feel is going to meet the best needs of our students. It offers the most components that we were looking for in a program. I am absolutely excited. And I want to share the most important piece. When you walk into classrooms now, in any one of these pilot rooms, what you will see in both pilot rooms are students who are excited and engaged in learning. And they are doing, and I say it's a completely different situation from what you would see prior to that. And that has nothing to do with instruction. Our instruction and our teachers are amazing. But these programs are garnering excitement for our students to the point of the pilot teachers will tell you, students are engaged with the content. They're going to the library, asking and seeking out books about content they learned about through this program, wanting to know more. And that's that love of reading that I want to see. And both programs absolutely have that. CKLA definitely checks the boxes for a few more areas that I think are going to really be a good fit for our district. So next steps coming up is getting communication out to to all of our teachers, which I sent something out this morning, letting them know what my recommendation was going to be. We need to get materials ordered ASAP so that they're here in time for training, especially with the supply chain issues. We're going to next work on aligning our standards-based report card to the new program. We're going to secure teacher training dates and get those out to everyone. We're going to increase our instructional coaches' knowledge around the CKLA program so that they're ready to go for fall, supporting all of our buildings. and looking into ongoing support and training for all staff. What questions does the board have?
Well, did you look at my notes before you did this?
I
No,
don't know.
you-
No.
I
did
had
not.
all these questions and you answered them like you were reading right off of my paper here.
All right, that's good.
I'm impressed, Greg. No, because I was curious about, well, one was the piloting, because I've done some piloting and I was familiar with the procedure and I knew it was different this time, but you answered that question and I understand that. And in the 5 priority groups, you said the committee decided on that. So, and that was a discussion.
Yeah, that was an ongoing in the early stages where we identified some priorities. A lot of that came from that needs assessment that we did, kind of identified those priority areas, as well as the learning that we did over those 2
The needs
years.
assessment slide scared me because it wasn't dated 2020 and I'm reading and thinking, is this a needs assessment now? And I was
Oh,
freaked-
no, sorry, I
that's-
should have clarified
No, you
that. Okay.
explained that also. I was thinking, oh my goodness, I thought we've been working.
No, that
on
was the prior.
Common assessments for a couple of years. I had another, I'm scribbling all over my paper now. You explained the voter fraud, so I'm okay there. That was.
The
wasn't
23,
funny.
28,
That wasn't
yes.
funny? Okay. No,
We
I
got
was
some-
trying to figure out.
There
where
were a
the-
few chuckles there.
Right colors though, blue was positive and red was not.
Okay, but there were 10 more.
Oh,
There were 10 more votes
going
than
there.
piloting people, so I was concerned that,
no, that's only pilot teachers that provided
Right.
that data.
so we piloted this across, I'm assuming, the grade levels
Yep,
equally.
All 5, it was all very well balanced as well as
didn't
could possibly
find-
be.
Anything that was early primary preference versus?
So yeah, it's a good question.
You know, if it's a lousy question, you can.
No,
tell me, too.
it is a good question because it did come out as one, it was a little bit more favorable. So CKLA, the skills component, and that's one of the things that really I looked at is which of these programs is going to build those foundational skills the strongest. And I think most committee members would agree and pilot teachers agree, CKLA kind of takes that by a little bit. That whole program is fully aligned in everything that's done and interwoven for students. So they're seeing what they learn in all the text, which is a huge piece. So from the foundational component, I say that shifts a little bit to the CKLA side, which for me was the most important piece in preparing our students to be readers.
Which is what we see in the BPT data.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Any thoughts on, I just noticed the 3 parts, writing, assessment, and diverse learners, neither of them scored very well. Is that something that like when you say assessment, is there an assessments that come with this program that
Yeah.
were just weak? In the
Well, no, to be
opinion of
honest,
you?
so what's interesting, and again, it kind of landed in 2 categories there. So Wit and Wisdom does a lot more with formative assessment.
Mhm.
It's built into the program, but it's a little bit less of the paper pencil piece, where CKLA has some pretty intensive assessments to the point of it might actually be a little bit of overkill. And so those are some of the things we're gonna have to look at with when we adopt any program. No program is perfect. And I always say that adopting a program is just the first step.
Absolutely.
Our next step is going to be to make some tweaks to that after we've implemented it for a year. But to your point on writing, we saw that the pilot teachers did say that the writing was very strong in both programs. We do know in CKLA that in 4th grade, we're likely going to have to bump up a little bit of that so that it aligns with what the state test is requiring. But all teachers said what they're seeing in student writing when they're reading text and be able to cite evidence is light years compared to where we currently are. They're seeing it come to fruition with these students.
Okay, well, but thank you. That was a thorough presentation. I know you had to squeeze a lot in there in a small amount of time. Other questions? I didn't mean to. Okay.
No, Bob has questions.
Many times, and I've been through it, reading, math, and science. So yes, you did it differently. I like the way you did it because when I did it, I had the book and the program for 3 months, and then I had another one, and then I had another one. It doesn't work in reading. It can work with science or social studies. Okay, now you made a decision, or they made a decision. Have you met with the teachers and in the pilot program, and were they positive with this decision?
So at our last meeting, when we brought everyone together, that's when we went through all that final data. And we left that room knowing that it was very much a split and that I would be then making a recommendation based on all those other components. So we had, when I say thorough conversations, Bob, we had the best conversations I've ever had in this district with teachers really just pouring their hearts out about their experience. There was a lot of great dialogue, and I'll tell you, these teachers are passionate for their program. But I can tell you another thing. So I've met with a lot of teachers after the fact, and one stands out. I won't share the name, but teacher caught me in the parking lot and we were talking about this. And at that time, she had piloted Wit and Wisdom, and she said she was telling me how much she loves it, the growth she's seen in her students. And then she said to me, she said, Greg, you know, ultimately though, after sitting through all of that, I know that either one of these programs is going to provide so much more for our students, and I can live with either one. Obviously, she loved the one she had, but she was confident in that this program, either one would do justice for our students.
Okay, thank you. Answered that. Any other school districts in this vicinity that are using this program?
Yep, excellent question. So yes, so Oswego, the entire school district of Oswego, Cortland just adopted it recently in the last 2 years. West Genesee has had this in place for multiple years. Liverpool.
That's all right.
Those are the first that are coming to the top of my head, but there's many others. in
That'll
the
give me
area.
some work.
Okay.
All right. Cost of a reading program is amazing.
It's not cheap.
No, I just want the board members to know that the reading program of all the materials and text, you're gonna be very busy this summer. Like you said, you're gonna have to order, is very costly. I don't need to know it, but I wanted the board members to know that. I am definitely
Hey,
gonna.
Bob, can I just share one piece on that
Go
though, an important piece? This program with CKLA is a fully all-inclusive. So what a teacher is going to receive on opening, well, prior to opening day, is literally a skid of books out that have all of the student readers, all of the teacher manuals, all of the online component. Everything is there that you need to implement this program well and have our students engaged. So it really is. And when you walk into a CKLA classroom, it's rich in books. and
Well,
readers.
so my other concern is we go through reading programs very quickly. I don't know how it is at West Hill, but I am concerned. I'm hoping this is going to stay with us for years because it is costly, and we've changed a couple times since I've been gone. And it's a change in philosophy, and then you turn around and you change to a new philosophy. So I am going to be very excited about you coming back to this board sometime late fall, because I'm concerned about the presentation, the teachers, how they present it to their kids. Is it whole group? Is it subgroups? I want to know a lot of that stuff. So I'm hoping you'll come back with that.
I'd be happy to anytime.
But my last thing is the teachers. Piloting is not easy. And it sounds like the teachers this year put in more time than I ever put in for piloting. And they don't really get paid for that. It's all extra time. They're teaching their class all day long. Yes, there's some workshop days that they can be taken out, but they have to do it after school, after they've taught all day. And I just want to thank every teacher that piloted for their work, because it's not easy. And it looks like they spent hundreds of hours on this compared to what I did. But I'm glad you did this, and good luck.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Any other questions or comments?
So how are you going to roll it out?
Well, the nice thing with this, and another reason that the slow and long pilot, we've learned so much from the initial training last summer, and as well as we've gotten a ton of feedback along the way. So we're right now, this spring, going to put all that together, work with the trainers to ensure that we're rolling this out in a way that's going to be the best impact for our teaching staff. I'm working on securing those dates now. Obviously, we're going to have most of the training. The bulk of it's going to be in the summer. We're likely going to try to get one in right before the end of the school year for some folks that aren't available in the summer. And then we'll also have to have a fall one for any new teachers that get hired. But the beauty in this is we now know who the really strong trainers are, so we can get those people locked in, and we can work with them in order to prepare a training that's really robust, but also meets the needs of our teachers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, it looks like no other questions, so thank you.
Okay, thanks,
very
everyone.
much. Okay, we have a budget presentation from Mr. Keegan. This will be a tough act to follow, Mr. Keegan. I want you to feel better, Greg, so.
Good evening. Okay, we're gonna update the board on where we're at with the budget presentation. And as I did last time, I'm gonna turn it right over to Dan.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Just so that you know, some of these slides look very similar to last week. There have been a few tweaks, but please stop us because we don't want to just bore you with some of the same slides, but please stop us whenever. So some of our priorities, as you've been seeing, ELA is a priority, SEL from what you were hearing from Bear Road, mathematics, DEI, health and safety, instructional operations, ENL, and that's one of the ones that we're going to focus on a little bit when we get to that slide. Some of our energy performance contracts and the capital project to replace the chillers at the junior high school. That's one of the areas that we've been looking at because that was an unanticipated cost. And that's one of those things that we need to make sure we repair. Our budget proposals that we've had are really stretching our resources as we attempt to meet all the district needs. There's an update to the tax cap calculation, has decreased to 3.37. And we're going to be having more budget conversations and meetings as we get closer to the April 4th deadline. This is very similar. There's been no change. Again, as you were listening to Mr. Stone, with the focus on ELA. Also, you heard from the Bear Road folks, the importance of having the coaches, whether they be ELA, the tech coaches, even the teaching assistants that are doing all of that work with all of the students. And you were able to see some of the results in the triangles. So still that focus on ELA and literacy and the supports. The next slide, if you know anything about what's been happening, we've really put a lot of emphasis on the SEL component. And you did hear the AIS and the counselors that have been presenting, and you can't say enough. SEL, not only North Syracuse, every single district across the country has been struggling and the need has been there. And what we do to support our staff, our students, and our families has just been critical to try to move forward. So we're continuing that work and looking to add a psychologist or social worker at Allen Road to support 811 program, social worker at the junior high. So those are the two that we're looking to add. Mathematics. There's not much change here. You heard Nick. We hired a new math director. You're seeing some of the results at the early grade levels. We really want to make sure that we are focusing not only on our ELA, but also on our math and working to deal with some of the challenges. The bottom bullet there and some of the work that Nick has been doing in talking to the staff is that we're looking to include more professional development, especially at our secondary level. We're just hearing that some of our teachers have been crying for some more professional development at those upper grade levels and trying to get them some professional development that they haven't had in over 10 years. The next slide is about DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion. Many of those things we talked about before. You will be seeing a presentation in early May. Also, as an additional, there's an additional club that has been working at the high school. Jackie Heyman has been involved, and it is a human rights club. So looking at all the ways that we can support diversity, equity, and inclusion for the district. Health and safety. Again, what we've gone through, what our students and our staff and our families have gone through has just been very challenging, and hiring the additional nurses was a necessity, and continuing with that support with a nursing supervisor as we move forward. So looking at it, adding an additional security guard at the junior high school, looking at an additional SRO and upgrading air filters and fresh air exchanges to our buildings. We talked again about administrative support at the middle schools. We showed you the ratios. Again, the needs have increased greatly, whether it be at our middle schools, but all schools and all districts. So adding an additional middle school assistant principal is going to help with many of the needs and challenges that they've been going through for the year. This next slide is one of the newer slides, and we've tried to give you information in the Friday letter, but we've been expanding. We've had our program for ENL at 2 elementary schools. Because of the growth, we're looking to go to a 3rd elementary school. In our elementary schools, we looked several years ago, returning students to their home building, and we're looking to do some of that with ENL. So adding some additional ENL supports is going to allow us to do that. And if you look at the languages of some of the students that are in our district, it's amazing. And just the first bullet at the top, where in 2007, we had 28 Ls. At this point, we have 272. So I think that says a lot as far as the growth. And one of the things that we've been trying to do as a district, and I think we're succeeding, we want to sell North Syracuse. In the ENL community, more and more families are saying it's a great place to be. And as people are looking at Central New York, we want people to look at our math scores and look at our ELA, look at all of our programs and say, what does North Syracuse have to offer and want to move here? Mr. Keegan?
So we're looking at estimated revenues for next year of $188 million. Again, I say this every year, the majority of our revenues come from the tax levy and state aid. As we've talked about, we got a very generous increase in state aid, increased by 5.52%, most of that being the foundation aid increase. I'll talk a little bit about the tax levy in a moment, but our building aid increased as well. And that was because we're getting the aid associated with the Bear Road project. Our tax cap, as Dan mentioned in the opening, we've fine-tuned this calculation. It seems like every week we've come back, or certainly every board meeting come back with a slightly lower number. And that has all been because we are evaluating when building aid will kick in for certain projects and what the related debt service will be. And so that line item called tax levy for capital 2022-2023, that line is the one that has changed. And we're looking at a estimated tax levy increase on a $100,000 home of $80 before STAR. On the expenditure side, we're at about $189 million. And yes, that number is higher than our revenues, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. We're in a people-based business, and the most important thing we do is put adults in front of children, and the majority of this budget is about the instructional process and supporting that process with people. Our salaries are up about 3%. I want to just explain that right up front that we have added a lot more people than the 3% indicates, but those folks have been funded using our CURSA and ARP federal funding. And so that's important to note. I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about our benefits. Our debt service is primarily due to the Bear Road project kicking in. That's the big increase there. And we've spent a lot of money with BOCES, and I've got more detailed slides to show you. But before I leave this slide, I want to just make sure that you're aware we currently have a deficit of $1.3 million. It's important to note, though, that that deficit reflects all of the proposals that Dan just took you through. They're added in there. So let's talk about one of the big culprits that are challenging us through this budget process, and that's inflation. And so just taking a step back, I mean, we're actually not that surprised that we're in an inflationary situation. The supply chain's been disrupted due to COVID. It's going to take a while for it to recover. At the same time that people couldn't get products because of the supply chain, we pumped massive amounts of federal stimulus money into the economy. I'm not saying that that was bad, but that was done in order to keep the economy going and to support people that were suffering during COVID. But those extra funds combined with their restricted supply chain had the exactly predictable effect of creating a lot more demand where supply was constricted, and that in fact drove up prices. So a couple of things that are happening. The Federal Reserve will raise interest rates. They're going to raise them 6 times this year, and they're saying 3 times next year. That is the traditional approach to stemming inflation, is to raise interest rates to maybe have folks think to themselves, well, rates are going up. Maybe I should think twice about buying that house or that car, or maybe I should keep my money in the bank or invested because I can get a return on my money now that interest rates are higher. But until inflation slows down, we're going to continue to see high prices. The other side of the equation is the supply chain. So we understand that it's been disrupted due to COVID, but we're also optimistic that it'll come back. The supply chain will repair itself here over time. And so I think when the supply chain is repaired and interest rates are up a bit, we're going to start to see some slowing of inflation. But again, this has really hurt North Syracuse. Looking at the graph there, you can see that all items are 7.9%. That's a pretty significant increase. Everything excluding food and energy is 6.4%. And for us living under a tax cap, where we can only use 2% of that inflation to increase the levy, it puts us at a disadvantage. And then I said earlier, very generous increase in our foundation aid, in our state aid, other than building aid, but that was still well below 6% an increase. So we need this inflation to slow down in order for our budget to be balanced. So tunneling into a few of these things. Retirement costs are up on the TRS side. But again, I've said this to the board. We're very lucky to be in New York State where we have TRS and ERS very well managed. The increase is a slight increase from 9.8 to 10.29. On the ERS side, it actually went down. Salaries and wages. Our salaries and wages, we've got negotiated contracts with all of our bargaining units that result in a 3.5% increase in wages. So that's factored into this budget. Fuel costs, as we've all seen, as we've gone to the pump, they're up quite a bit. Fuel is up 25.6% for the last 12 months, ended February. And so that's a challenge for us. The only thing I want to just remind the board about and the community about is that we get transportation aid. And so while those costs are up, we're going to get aid to mitigate roughly 80% of it. So that's helpful. Energy costs are up, but we're in a energy consortium. We entered into a 3-year supply agreement just prior to the energy costs going up. That's very helpful. And those rates are reflected in our budget as well. We do pay a lot of tuition to charter schools and special education facilities, and we've seen a dramatic increase in these in the last 2 years. Those entities' costs are going up, and they're passing those on to us. Aed Replacement, this is just kind of bad timing. When the law came out that we needed to have AEDs in place, we bought a ton of them, and now they're at the end of their life, and we need to buy all new AEDs in the 22-23 school year. That's included in our budget as well. Medical benefits. I want to just explain this for a minute. We have a great health oversight committee, a labor management committee, where we work on a number of things that allow us to provide our employees with very high quality medical benefits, but at a very responsible cost, meaning we're always looking for ways we can save money. And we've done a great job with that. So much so that we've had favorable experience the last few years. And what we've done with that is each subsequent budget that we've worked on, we have applied the rates to the budget amount that our expert consultant has advised us. And so over the last several years, we've built a little bit of cushion in our medical benefits budget. We did that consciously, knowing that there's going to be a time when benefits are going to go up at a rate that we can't easily absorb in our budget. So benefits are up 10.8% as of the latest projection from our expert consultant. We'll continue to look at that between now and the time we finalize the budget, but we're only impacting the budget by 2.26% this year. And that's because we're taking all that surplus, that cushion, and we're using that to offset the costs this year so that it doesn't negatively impact our budget. The other thing I want to make sure that people are clear on, the premium equivalent rates that we've used for our employee contributions, again, provided by our expert consultant rate, did not have any budget surplus in them. That was the actual rates quoted by the consultant. So this is just one illustration of a budget strategy we've talked about as a board, we've talked about as a cabinet. We need to be conservative in times when things are good, so that when things are bad, we can ride through the storm. And right now we're experiencing a little bit of a, between inflation and just medical benefits in general, a little bit of a storm. And so those assumptions are built into the budget here, and we're able to have less of an increase than we might otherwise have. So that's kind of the operating budget, the general fund budget. We have two other propositions that Dan mentioned. And this first one, the energy performance contract, could not be more timely. Matt Irwin, our director of facilities, worked very closely with our architects on our building condition survey. And as they went through that, they realized that there were opportunities for us to become more efficient by saving energy and doing additional projects. And to that end, Matt was instrumental in securing a NYSERDA grant that allowed us to bring an engineering firm in to look at our facilities and identify specific opportunities where we could save energy. And so, subject to voter approval, we'd like to consider about $7.5 million of improvements impacting things like lighting and heating and other general energy areas that will allow us to reduce our operating costs. The good news is 85.3% of this will be covered by building aid. We feel so strongly about this that we're recommending that $1.1 million of fund balance be used to support this project so that there'll be no cost impact to our local taxpayers. Taxes will not increase. And then the savings from these improvements will reduce the district's energy costs in the future. Again, it couldn't be more timely as we're seeing such high energy costs. Again, if the voters approve this, the bidding would occur in the summer of 22 of this summer, and the work would begin as soon as possible and potentially be completed in 2024. This is the proposition that the board would approve tonight. It clearly explains it's up to about $7.5 million worth of work. And I just want to say that we might not do $7.5 million worth of work. We're only going to do the work that will yield an appropriate payback and benefit to the district. The engineer that we hired identified $6 million worth of work. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in here should additional work be identified. And that's the proposition that we'd ask you to approve tonight and the voters to consider in May. The other project Dan mentioned was the chillers at the junior high. We did identify these as old when we did the building condition survey, although we thought they would last until the next capital project. Murphy's Law here. We immediately started seeing problems with the chillers. We've done everything we can to hold them together and keep the building air conditioning system working. But we now have an opportunity to replace these with more energy efficient, more effective chillers. The cost of this project is $1.4 million. Again, 83.5% of the cost will be covered by building aid. The balance, $231,000, will be covered by our fund balance. No cost to the taxpayers, no tax increase. And again, the chillers will be more effective in cooling the building and more energy efficient to operate. This is the proposition that we're asking you to consider tonight. And the voters to consider in May on the ballot. And we think this is a really good use of these funds. And we think this will put us in a good position with the HVAC system at the junior high for a long time to come. I'd like to, having talked about those two propositions, I'd like to drop back to our overview of the budget situation and just try to explain, why do we have a deficit? What can we do about it? I've already mentioned that the tax levy that's at 3.37% only incorporates inflation of 2%, despite actual inflation being 6.4%. Our state aid, excluding building aid, was up 5.52%, again, less than inflation. Those two revenue sources combined represent 95% of our revenues. And so inflation's the big culprit here. On the expenditure side, this is the inflation piece. Contractual equipment and supplies are up, significantly more than we're able to raise our revenues. BOCES has increased significantly, and thank God for BOCES. They've done an amazing job supporting us during this difficult time with COVID. But we've spent a lot on technology, a lot on remote instruction, a lot to support our special ed population through BOCES. Our debt service increased due to the Bear Road project. Again, approved by the voters. We're really happy with the way that project's going, but it has a cost associated with it. So what can we do to close the gap? We're going to work diligently over the next couple of weeks. We've got, as Dan said, we've got many more meetings, many more conversations to fine tune and tighten up the budget. We're also we're evaluating opportunities to reduce our staff through attrition, retirements, while maintaining low class sizes and operational effectiveness. So we take this piece of the conversation very seriously. We don't take it lightly, but we also want to be in a position to balance this budget. So we have to look at where we have retirements. And we're also going to look at using federal funds and other reserves to close the gap between now and the time we bring the board the final budget proposal. Just to remind everybody on those federal funds, we've got $7.8 million worth of CRSA funds. That's coronavirus response and relief supplemental appropriations. And we've got $11.5 million of ARP funds. That's the American Rescue Plan money. We've talked to the board about how we plan on using that. And we can, if need be, recharacterize some of that. We have the opportunity to do that. And so we'll look to these funds as a possible place to balance the budget if we can't do it otherwise. I want to also, it seems appropriate to just remind you about where we are with our fund balance. The Comptroller's Office recommends that we have 4%. Even considering the referendums passed by the voters in December, we have a little over 4% now, and that gives us the ability to take care of those propositions that we discussed earlier. So people shouldn't be concerned about that. Our reserves are in good shape. We did use some of the debt service fund approved by the voters in December to put that toward our capital projects. But we still have $16.2 million in what we think will be our balance of reserves as of June. These we've talked about, so I won't belabor them, but we're going to do our normal vehicle bonding proposition, buying buses and some other key M&O vehicles. This will have about a $2.61 impact on a $100,000 home, again, before STAR. We'll have a library proposition out there. The library does an amazing job in Salina, 1.9% increase on their small budget. That'll only be in front of the Salina voters. The vote in election is May 17th. And the polling places are as they normally are for residents living north of 481 at Cicero Elementary and south at the administration building here on Taft Road. And there'll be ample opportunities for people to register to vote, including a special registration night on May 3rd. That's the night of our public hearing here at the district office. So we're coming to the home stretch here. Tonight's the 21st, and you can see the items that we've talked about tonight. We're considering, depending on how our conversations go this week, about asking the board to maybe meet the week of the 28th so we can share an update with you. Otherwise, we'll be back on the 4th with a proposed budget presentation. And we'll discuss and deliberate that budget in hopes that the board can adopt it that evening. On the 18th of April, we'll have the BOCES election and budget vote, the May 3rd budget hearing, as I mentioned, and the budget vote on the 17th. And that concludes the budget update for tonight. Any questions or comments?
I do.
Mary?
Thank you for your presentation. And thank you also for looking at long-range solutions to reduce energy costs. That's going to be a big help in the future. I'm also concerned with the deficit. And we've had so many retirements, people with 20 years, 25, 30 plus. There has to be some savings from all those retirements.
Yeah, there is. There is what we call breakage, right? That's the difference between the retiring person's salary and the new person's salary. But you have to remember, when the retiring person leaves, they take a health plan with them, and the new person comes and they get a health plan. So that kind of eats up some of that gap. But yes, we've identified that as an opportunity. And in addition to just looking at, do we need to replace everybody who retired?
Right. Also with the bus proposals, when do we switch to the gas bus? From
So 3
diesel?
years ago, we switched to
Has
gas.
there been any savings from that?
You know, the big savings has been in some of the maintenance areas, because we were having some challenges with some of the diesel equipment. Again, we do a good job with warranties. So most of that work was covered under warranties. So switching to gas will help us with some of the longer term problems. After that 5 years, when they're off warranty, is when things can get a little more expensive. But we're very happy with the operation of the gas buses. And you'll cringe to hear me tell you this, but I was on a conference call this week talking about electric buses. There's some legislation out there that's going to require schools to consider having electric buses, and we're a long ways away from that. But right now we're happy with the gas fleet. We plan on buying additional gas buses this year.
I hear the electric, they don't do well in the very cold weather that we have.
Yeah, the technology is just early yet, and we're just learning. But the other thing we have to remember is we triple trip our kids. So, and so the time between charges is based on how many hours, how many miles you're running that bus. And so it'll be a bit of a challenge for a large geographic area like ours, where our buses are triple tripped, to be able to meet the charging requirements of the technology today. But, we're looking way out. We're trying to look into the future and make sure we make good investment decisions. And so it'll be a while before we're buying electric buses, because I think the technology is just not ready for us yet.
So for our fuel purchase, that contract ended at the end of February. Is that what that meant?
No, so our fuel purchases, so we have a 3-year on the energy side, electric and gas.
Okay.
We have a 3-year contract that we entered into before prices went up. And so we're in the midst of that now. So luckily we locked in at some more favorable rates. We have seen our fuel costs, our gasoline and diesel prices have gone up quite a bit, as they have for everybody else. But we buy that very attractively, meaning we're buying that under through a consortium.
Okay.
And through a bid. So we're buying our gas at an attractive price, but it's still gone up quite a bit. We've had to, for the first time, we've really had to work to make sure that our gas and diesel budget is adequate. Because you think about it, if this is a trend, and we're budgeting now for a year starting July 1st, what might gas prices look like a year from now or 18 months from now? It's just hard to predict that.
Right. Hopefully better.
Yeah, hopefully better. Yes.
And at some point, would we stop buying diesel? We wouldn't need it anymore?
So the diesel, as we swap out the buses, we'll buy less and less diesel. And that's why the fuel island project that we did was so advantageous, because we actually have 3 different tanks out there. So we can, depending as we move to more gas, we can use more of the tanks for gas and less for diesel.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions?
I just got one. It's just, what was the original attraction to diesel and then they were going back to gas?
So the traction to diesel, I wasn't here when that decision was made. But diesel buses, by all reports, at one time were more energy or fuel efficient. And there was a thought that they were easier to maintain. But what ended up happening was the EPA standards increased quite a bit on diesel. And so these scrubbers that are on the exhaust systems became pretty expensive to maintain. And we've all been behind a bus that regenerates. So periodically the bus will emit these black clouds of smoke, and that's the system cleaning itself out. Which it's hard to believe is environmentally friendly, but apparently is how the system's supposed to work. And if you think about diesel fuel, it works, and those systems work really well on over-the-road trucks that are just constantly going. But in stop and go traffic, it's just not the ideal situation, particularly with the way the diesel systems need to work now to be in compliance with EPA standards. The gas engines, again, they're working great for us. We don't have obviously the emissions challenges we have with diesel. And so I think it was a good choice to move. I'll stand behind our decision to move to gas from diesel, and our mechanics would support that as well.
Thank you.
Yes, gas is cheaper than diesel.
That's the bus itself.
The bus itself is a little bit, well, now they've inflated price. The last time we bought a diesel bus was 3 years ago. But yeah, because the componentry on of diesel exhaust systems is becoming quite expensive. So yes, they were cheaper.
Okay.
Any others?
No other questions. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, comments from the audience. We have a registered speaker. They are not here. We'll move to committee reports, Board of Education. I'll start with Mary for policy.
Yes, our next policy committee meeting is April 5th.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crabtree, legislative.
So our next meeting is the day after, Mary, April 6th. Don will be coming to speak a little bit about the budget because we will have finalized it on Monday night, and we'll talk about that. But one issue that has concerned me is this universal school meals. And we will be talking about this at a legislative. I want the board members to know that this year, as you know, lunches were paid through the government and no one had to pay. That runs out, I believe, June 30th. And we have a minority leader in the Senate that has said, we are not going to continue this. So I'm going to be asking people to contact Mr. Katko and Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer, because this is going to affect us. It's going to affect every school district. So we'll be talking about that. You want me to go into BOCES now?
Yes, please go ahead.
To make it. So you got 2 flyers. Thank you, Jill, for doing the 2 flyers. Because I know some of us work during the day. Right, Mary? I'm sorry. Retire here. But anyway, there's open houses tomorrow at both our CTE program and also Innovation Tech. I've been to it before. It's 2 hours, but you could go for a half hour. You could go for how long? And all the staff will be there. And a lot of students from CNS will be coming that are 10th graders looking at our programs. And you might want to look at some of the embedded programs that we have. So I want to make sure you had that. Each year there's a Skills USA competition that our BOCES regionally participates. And there were 2 CNS students. Matter of fact, we met one of them at early childhood. Janeka Williams got 2nd place in early childhood, and Kim Gordon, it's called Action Skills, got 1st place. And then the state competition is April 28th at the state fairgrounds, and it's amazing. It runs from 8 in the morning to 5 at night. So we're talking about thousands of students with culinary and electrician, and it's amazing. They take over every building at the state fairgrounds, Center Progress Building, the state building, and it's just an amazing thing. So I'm hoping that some of us could just go over for a little bit. And our annual meeting is April 6th at the district office, which is right on 7th North. And dinner will be provided by Santangelo's. And then there'll be a very short meeting afterwards going over the BOCES budget that you will be voting on April 18th. You'll be voting on that. And I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent's comments.
Well, my first comment is I don't like it when Mr. Crabtree goes before me because he steals a lot of the thunder. But I do want to say Friday night went to the performance Chicago, and our students are absolutely amazing. The skill level, the quality, the talent, every aspect was really top notch. And I'm just proud to see the quality of students in our performing arts. It was truly amazing. Do want to congratulate Rob Seichin, girls basketball. They made it to semifinals of states. They lost in a close one by 2 points. Several of our young ladies really did well this year. I see Alita Carey Santangelo was first team. Alexa Kulikowski made first team. Kat McRobbie Taru made second team, and Sydney Neshi made an honorable mention. So again, an amazing run for women's basketball. So that was nice to see. We did have on Saturday a media day. Several of our students that are playing Division I sports, that was coordinated by Mr. Bednarski. And from what I'm hearing, they do want to come back. They were impressed with our facilities and the location. So there'll be more to come as we get into softball and baseball. Hit some of the Optimist winners: Alana Manning, Olivia Mara, Golden Duru. Again, congratulations to them. And I won't repeat the skills regional competition, early childhood, and that was Janica, and Kimberly Gordon was first place. And that is all. Thank you.
Comments, Board of Education.
I do.
Yes.
I too was there Friday night to see Chicago and with a few of the board members, and it was very impressive. Some of the things that stood out to me, of course, were the talent of the choreography and the singing abilities and things of that nature. But there were a few times where even the lighting that was directed, where the person had to chase the light, and that's choreographed in there as well. It's not easy to do. And we have high school students performing in that level on the stage and behind the scenes, and just everything was done top notch. So congratulations to all of the entire team, the actors, the director. It was incredible.
Thank you. Other comments? Oh,
President's wife. Dollars for Scholars, as you know, gives out scholarships each year. And this Sunday, March 27th, thanks to the Teachers Association letting us use the building from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., there's going to be Stuff the Mail so that we can put out letters for people to donate. So if you could give a half hour, anybody around this table, there'll be students, there'll be teachers, there'll be administrators. It would be appreciated. 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Sunday. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Crabtree. Thank you, Mr. Crabtree. No other comments? Okay, I'll move on to routine action items. I'll look for a motion for consideration of approval of the minutes of the March 7th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Education. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Ms. Kruger. Any questions, discussion? Excuse me, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. If I get a motion for B, C, and D, please. Motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Ms. Scanlon. These are considerations of the classification of disabled students from the school, CSE, preschool, and home instruction. That is before us. Seeing no comments, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Motion for discussion action item A, please. Motion from Mr. Crabtree, second from Mr. Marizio. We have before us the seeker resolution and the resolutions to authorize the ballot propositions and we saw these today just now in the presentation from Mr. Keegan. Any discussion there? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. Motion for B, please. Notice of the public hearing. Motion from Ms. Kruger, second from Dr. Kramer. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Item C, a motion please for the approval of the 22-23 district calendar. Motion, Mr. Thorne, second, Mr. Marizio. This would be the 22-23 calendar. How many times will we amend that? I'm sorry. Okay. No discussion other than my comment. Scratch that from the minutes. All in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Item D, please, non-resident health and welfare service rate. Motion, Mr. Thorne, second from Ms. Kruger. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Non-resident tuition rates for 21-22. Motion, please place that before us. Motion, Ms. Kruger, second from Ms. Scanlon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Have acknowledgement of a gift, a motion to accept that, please. Motion, Mr. Marizio, second from Dr. Kramer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. We have a retirement to acknowledge. The retirement is Deborah Whalen, school bus driver with 17 years of service. So we thank her for her service and wish her luck and health in retirement. If I get a motion to approve personnel report A, instructional report, motion from Mr. Crabtree, second from Mr. Thorne. That is before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Support staff B, a motion please place that before us. Motion from Ms. Scanlon, second from Ms. Kruger. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. An administrative personnel report C, a motion to place that before us, please. Motion from Ms. Kruger, second from Ms. Scanlon. Any discussion there? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. I'll make a motion and ask for a second. The motion will be to move into executive session for the purpose of reviewing the employment record of one individual with no action to follow. Second from Mr. Marizio. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And a motion, please, for adjournment. Motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Mr. Herman. No discussion, all in favor? Opposed, we are adjourned. Looks like 8:49. Thank you.